Hi, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this channel, to the channel that I suspect you like it, you like watching it. And I appreciate the fact that you take your time to watch it sometime and just be able to catch up on some of the global, local, and some of them both local and international issues. So this is Omnigram, a channel that I know that you appreciate listening to. I know that I don't spend time showing my face. I, however, like talking about many issues that people are concerned about, or issues that interest me and also interest you. So it's very important to get a sense of what is happening in the world. I mean, recently I've been listening to a number of prophets, and I've been listening also to a number of pastors teaching. And as a Christian and as a person who likes listening to sermons or pastors preaching, it was an issue that came to my attention, and it made me think a little bit. What is the issue? The issue is there are many pastors who have been prophesying recently, and they've been prophesying about South Africa. As a South African myself, despite the fact that I live in the United States, but as a South African, I'm more interested about also issues that are taking place in my home country, where I was born. And many prophets are prophesying about the destruction of South Africa. Others were saying it is wrong for people to raise the issue of immigrants. I'm an immigrant myself, and I would prefer a situation where people obey the laws of the country that they visit. It doesn't matter which country it is. If you visit a country, you need to obey the laws of that country. If the law of that country requires you to make an application for a visa, if you plan to visit that country, you need to make an application and you be granted a visa before you can travel to that country. If you come to America, you are expected to obey the laws of this country. If you plan to travel to America, you are expected to apply and be granted a visa, unless your country is a visa-free country. In other words, you don't need a visa to visit America. That's a different ballgame altogether. Even if you are planning to visit South Africa, you are required to make an application for a visa, unless South Africa and your home country have a visa-free agreement. Like, for instance, Ghana and South Africa, they have a visa-free agreement. In other words, if you have a South African passport, you can travel to Ghana without a visa, and a Ghanaian can travel to South Africa without a visa because they have an agreement. But if you are a Nigerian, if you are a Cameroonian, if you are from Ivory Coast or a Cameroonian and so on, you need to have a visa to visit South Africa, and you must apply. You cannot just show up at the airport and expect to be let into South Africa. I mean, South Africa is not a banana republic. You need to follow the laws of South Africa. So many of the prophets that I've heard never touched on this very same issue. Or rather, they never emphasized this very same point, that people must apply in order to come to South Africa. In other words, they must get their documentation in order before they apply, they come to South Africa. That's one point. Application and be granted a visa. Come to South Africa legally. If you're a Zimbabwean, you had to come to South Africa using your own passport to visit. And after the 90 days, you must go back to your country. And if you want to work in South Africa, forget for a moment about the ZEP, the Zimbabwe permit. If you plan to visit South Africa as a Zimbabwean, you just have to get your passport. What is it difficult about that? Just to get your passport, then you'll be let in. I visited Zimbabwe, I just took my passport and went into that country. I visited one country in Asia. I took my passport and I got there and I was allowed and let in. I was using my American passport, right? I was in Uganda. I applied for a visa to go and visit Uganda, So you need to get your papers in order, and pastors and prophets must actually preach about people following the necessary procedures, following the laws of the countries that they are planning to visit, and identifying even those problems that the immigrants that visit some countries, particularly South Africa, they make some mistakes, some of the immigrants. And the argument that South Africans commit crime also in their own country, that argument is basically dead. It's very shallow. You can't make that as an argument to say, no, because South Africans commit crime, therefore when you come as well as an immigrant without papers, you can commit crime, whatever, trying to justify why a person should not be arrested or a person should just be ignored because South Africans also commit crime. That's shallow. Actually, that's nonsense. Behave yourself when you are visiting somebody. When I visit somebody in his house, I behave myself. I don't get there and start behaving like a rascal. That's wrong. That's wrong. Behave yourself. Conduct yourself in a manner that is civilized. In America, if you are a citizen of this country and you commit certain crimes, you got naturalized and you commit certain crimes, your citizenship can be revoked. If you are not yet a citizen and you have a green card or what is called a permanent resident, legal permanent resident, and you have the card, you can be deported and your card be scrapped and you can be declared persona non grata and you'll be shipped out. You need to behave yourself. And I expect that pastors who to prophesy about this thing and even tell people to behave themselves. But their prophecies is the prophecy of doom and gloom. South Africa, because it's chasing foreigners, those people in South Africa, they shall be fire and fury. South Africa will collapse, South Africa will burn. Really doesn't make sense. I'm sorry, pastors. Your prophecies are really, I don't understand them. And surprisingly, what surprises me more is that all of a sudden, towards the June 30 deadline, every pastor then started to have prophecy. They became prophesying. They failed to prophesy a lot of things, including the floods in Nigeria and in Uganda. They failed to prophesy about those things. They failed even to prophesy about the children that were abducted in Nigeria. I expected the prophets to prophesy about those things, if really they were prophets. Just because they were coming up with some things that were influenced by about what is happening around, close to them, or even to people that are around them. Then they start generating prophecies. I find that very, very surprising, and to an extent bordering on being ludicrous. I find it very ludicrous. It's ludicrous. I mean, really. I've never watched YouTube and saw many pastors prophesying about South Africa like I did in June. I was wondering, all of a sudden people have this mushroom of prophecies, that is surprising. So I hope that in future they will stop this fabricated prophecies that are influenced by some events and their logic than what God said. Because some of them, they've never heard from God. They're just generating their own prophet. And some of them, by the way, they are criminals. They are fugitive from the law, to be honest. Some of them, their record is not that clean. Some of these people that are making prophecies. Yes, some of them, I respect them personally. But I expect them to behave in a manner that is more decorum on their office and very civilized and very honest. So please, pastors, I respect you personally. Try and not get involved into politics and make statements that are not really godly, and speak only when God has actually spoken to you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for listening to me on Omnigram. This is the channel that I share my views and thoughts. Enjoy your day and stay blessed.